At 81 years old, the world knows Gladys Knight as the Empress of Soul, a voice that carried generations through joy, heartbreak, and change. But behind the applause, the Grammy Awards, and the timeless hits lies a story few truly know. A story of devastating loss, broken marriages, financial betrayal, and health battles that tested her spirit again and again. From dazzling stages with the Pips to lonely nights fighting personal demons, Gladys's journey is not just one of triumph, but of tragedy. And now, as she opens up in her later years, the truth is more heartbreaking than fans could have ever imagined. This is the untold story of Gladys Knight, the rise, the fall, the pain, and the strength of a woman who gave the world her voice, even as she silently carried her own suffering. Gladys Knight's story begins not on the world's grandest stages, but in a small Baptist church in Atlanta, Georgia, where her voice first echoed with a raw power that stunned everyone who heard it. Born in 1944, Gladys was raised in a close-knit religious family. Her parents recognized her gift early, and by the age of 7, she had already won Ted Mack's Original Amateur Hour, a national competition that hinted at the extraordinary career ahead. By the late 1950s, Gladys had teamed up with her brother, Merrill Bubba Knight, her sister Brenda, and cousins William and Eleanor Guest. Together, they became the Pips, a name inspired by a family member. At first, the group played small venues and community events, but their chemistry and Gladys's unmistakable voice quickly set them apart. They were polished, versatile, and resilient. A family act with an energy that could outshine the best. The road to fame wasn't immediate. The Pips spent years grinding, recording singles that barely got radio play. But in 1961, they signed with Fury Records and released Every Beat of My Heart, which became their breakthrough hit. Suddenly, Gladys Knight and the Pips were on the map. Their harmonies, combined with Gladys's emotional delivery, offered something unique in the Motown era, music that was soulful yet deeply grounded in gospel roots. Motown Records soon took notice, and by the mid-1960s, they joined the legendary label. At Motown, Gladys and the Pips were often overshadowed by powerhouse acts like Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Temptations, and Marvin Gaye. Yet, Gladys's voice had a grit, a raw edge that made her impossible to ignore. She wasn't polished in the same way Ross was. Instead, she was real, heartfelt, and deeply emotional. Fans connected with that authenticity, and soon the group delivered massive hits like I Heard It Through the Grapevine and If I Were Your Woman. By the 1970s, Gladys Knight and the Pips were dominating the charts with a string of unforgettable classics. Songs like Midnight Train to Georgia didn't just top the Billboard Hot 100, they became cultural touchstones, beloved by audiences across generations. That track alone won a Grammy Award and remains one of the most iconic soul ballads in history. The lyrics about sacrifice and love, paired with Gladys's aching, powerful delivery, struck a chord with millions. But behind the fame, cracks were already forming. Gladys's rise came with enormous pressures. Touring relentlessly, battling with record labels over creative control, and managing the dynamics of a group that was also family. Every performance carried weight, every misstep had consequences, and Gladys often shouldered the responsibility as the face and voice of the act. Her personal life also began to show the strain. She married young, at just 16 years old, to musician James "Jimmy" Newman. Their relationship was troubled from the start, marked by Newman's struggles with addiction. By her early 20s, Gladys was not only balancing a skyrocketing career but also enduring heartbreak and raising children in the chaos. Yet, through all of this, her music became her lifeline. Gladys poured her emotions into every note, and that honesty became her trademark. She wasn't just singing songs, she was living them. Her fans could hear her struggles, her triumphs, and her pain woven into every ballad and every performance. By the time the group left Motown for Buddha Records in the 1970s, Gladys Knight and the Pips had cemented themselves as legends. They continued, releasing hits like Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me and I've Got to Use My Imagination, further proving their staying power. Gladys was not just another Motown star, she was carving her own legacy as the Empress of Soul. Still, while the public saw a superstar, Gladys was quietly carrying enormous burdens, financial struggles, marital heartbreak, and the emotional toll of constant touring. For all the applause she received on stage, her personal life was already marked by shadows that would only grow darker in the decades ahead. While the world celebrated Gladys Knight as a musical powerhouse, her personal life was riddled with heartbreak, betrayal, and tragedy. For every triumph on stage, there seemed to be a crushing loss off stage. Behind her radiant smile and powerful voice was a woman carrying an immense emotional weight. Her first marriage to James "Jimmy" Newman, whom she wed at just 16, was a devastating introduction to adult life. Newman struggled with drug addiction, and their union quickly unraveled. Though they had 2 children together, the instability was unbearable. Gladys shouldered much of the responsibility for raising their family while also trying to establish her career. Ultimately, the marriage ended in divorce, leaving Gladys a young mother facing life's hardships largely on her own. But it wasn't her only heartbreak. Gladys married 3 more times in her life, each relationship bringing fresh challenges. Her second marriage to Barry Hankerson, a music executive and uncle of the late singer Aaliyah, seemed promising at first. But the relationship soured amid accusations of infidelity and financial disputes. Their marriage produced 1 child, but it ended in a bitter divorce, with custody battles and emotional wounds that lingered for years. In her third marriage, Gladys found herself entangled in further personal and financial troubles. Despite her global fame, she often discovered she had been misled, exploited, or betrayed by those closest to her. Money vanished, trust was broken, and Gladys was left to rebuild not just her fortune, but her faith in people. The tragedies weren't confined to her marriages. Gladys faced unimaginable grief with the loss of her son, Jimmy Newman Jr. In 1999, he died under heartbreaking circumstances at just 37 years old. He had battled drug addiction for years, and though Gladys had fought tirelessly to help him, the disease ultimately claimed his life. For a mother who had poured everything into her children, this loss was shattering. She later admitted that no award, no standing ovation, could ever mend the pain of losing a child. Compounding her struggles were her own battles with addiction, not to drugs or alcohol, but to gambling. In candid interviews, Gladys revealed that she once spent years addicted to casino gambling, losing millions of dollars at the tables. The habit nearly destroyed her financially and emotionally, leaving her desperate for a way out. It took immense willpower and faith for her to finally walk away from the addiction. Faith became one of her greatest anchors. Raised in the church, Gladys returned to her spiritual roots in her darkest moments. In later years, she openly spoke about how prayer and her Christian beliefs helped her endure her losses, her heartbreaks, and the pressures of fame. Music gave her a platform, but faith gave her strength. Still, the relentless demands of the music industry took their toll. Gladys often found herself at odds with record labels and managers, many of whom failed to prioritize her best interests. Despite her incredible talent and the Pips' undeniable success, she didn't always receive the financial rewards that matched her fame. Exploitation was a cruel reality in the entertainment industry, and Gladys, like many black artists of her era, suffered because of it. By the 1980s, Gladys was fighting battles on multiple fronts: personal, financial, and emotional. Yet she remained resilient. Her children gave her purpose, and her fans gave her strength. Every time she stepped on stage, she transformed her pain into music, turning personal tragedies into performances that resonated with millions. her voice became not just a gift but a testimony. When she sang of heartbreak, she wasn't just performing, she was reliving her own experiences. Songs like Neither One of Us Wants to Be the First to Say Goodbye carried a raw emotional truth because Gladys herself knew the agony of broken relationships. But even as she kept moving forward, the tragedies haunted her. Failed marriages, financial betrayal, the loss of her son, and the battle against gambling were scars she carried into her later years. Fans adored her for her strength, but few truly understood the depths of her pain. By the time the 1990s rolled around, Gladys Knight was no longer just a soul icon, she was a survivor. Yet, as her career entered new chapters, more challenges awaited. The stage would always bring her glory, but life behind the curtain would remain heartbreakingly complicated. By the 1990s and early 2000s, Gladys Knight had already secured her place as a legend. She had given the world unforgettable classics, won Grammy Awards, and been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But even as accolades poured in, her life was far from easy. The public saw the glamorous gowns and standing ovations, yet behind the curtain, Gladys faced challenges that cut far deeper than the applause could reach. Her later career was marked by both professional reinvention and personal turmoil. After decades with the Pips, Gladys finally embarked on a solo journey in the late 1980s and 1990s. While her voice remained strong and deeply soulful, the music industry had changed. New genres like hip-hop and R&B dominated the charts, and artists like Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, and eventually Beyoncé captured the spotlight. Gladys still drew crowds, but she was no longer the face of soul music for a younger generation. This shift was difficult. For someone who had built her life around performing, the idea of fading relevance weighed heavily. Yet Gladys didn't give up. She recorded gospel albums, performed residencies in Las Vegas, and took her music on international tours. Her commitment to her craft never wavered, but the grind of touring into her 60s and 70s placed enormous strain on her health. Physically, the years of relentless performing took their toll. Gladys endured exhaustion, vocal strain, and the wear and tear that comes from spending decades in the spotlight. In 2015, she revealed that she had quietly battled cancer, undergoing treatment, and keeping much of the fight private. For fans, who saw her on stage during those years, few could have guessed the battle she was enduring behind the scenes. Her health struggles didn't end there. In 2018, rumors swirled when Gladys appeared at Aretha Franklin's funeral looking frail. Some speculated she, too, was facing pancreatic cancer. Though Gladys clarified that she did not have the disease, she admitted she had been undergoing medical evaluations and dealing with her own health scares. For her fans, the moment was a stark reminder that even icons are not invincible. Emotionally, the later years also weighed heavy. The death of her son, Jimmy Newman Jr., in 1999 never left her. In interviews decades later, Gladys admitted that she still carried the grief every single day. "You never get over losing a child," she confessed. "You just learn to live with the pain." That lingering sorrow often surfaced in her performances, as audiences could feel the depth of her emotion when she sang. Financially, too, her struggles continued. Even as she toured, lawsuits and disputes surfaced. At one point, Gladys became embroiled in a legal battle over her chicken and waffles restaurant chain, which ended in public controversy and financial setbacks. For a woman who had once battled gambling addiction, these disputes reawakened fears of instability and betrayal. Yet through it all, Gladys clung to her faith. By her 70s, she had become more outspoken about her spirituality, crediting her Christian beliefs with helping her overcome illness, addiction, and grief. She often said that without her faith, she might not have survived the tragedies she endured. Still, for her fans, watching Gladys age and struggle with health was heartbreaking. She was more than a singer. She was a symbol of resilience, a voice that had guided generations through heartbreak and healing. Seeing her frail, battling illness and enduring personal tragedy was painful for those who had only ever known her as the radiant Empress of Soul. In her later career, Gladys never fully stepped away from the stage. Even into her late 70s, she continued to perform, drawing tears from audiences with her timeless voice. But there was a fragility to her presence, a sense that every performance might be her last. It was both inspiring and deeply sad, proof of her unyielding spirit, but also a reminder of the toll her life had taken. By the time she reached her 80s, Gladys Knight was more than a performer. She was a survivor who had lived through failed marriages, financial betrayal, the death of her child, addiction, and cancer scares. Her later career was not about chasing hits, but about sharing her soul, reminding the world that behind the legend was a woman who had endured unimaginable pain. Her story in these years is both uplifting and tragic. On one hand, she proved that strength and faith can carry you through the darkest times. On the other, her struggles remind us that even the greatest voices cannot sing away the heartbreak life delivers. For Gladys Knight, the applause never erased the loneliness, the illness, or the grief. As Gladys Knight stepped into her 80s, she carried with her a lifetime of triumphs and tragedies. The Empress of Soul had lived through the golden age of Motown, conquered the charts with timeless hits, and built a career that few could ever rival. Yet, despite the applause, awards, and recognition, her later years revealed a woman shaped as much by heartbreak as by success. Her legacy in music is undeniable. With a career spanning more than 6 decades, she gave the world unforgettable songs like Midnight Train to Georgia, Neither One of Us, and Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. She earned 7 Grammy Awards, was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and influenced generations of singers from Whitney Houston to Mary J. Blige. Her voice, raw, soulful, and brimming with truth, remains one of the most iconic in American music history. But for Gladys, legacy was about more than accolades. It was about resilience, survival, and authenticity. In her private life, however, the tragedies never stopped shaping her. The death of her son, Jimmy Jr., haunted her well into her later years. In interviews, she admitted that she spoke to him in prayer, seeking comfort in the belief that one day they would be reunited. For a woman who had sung so often about love and loss, this personal grief gave her performances an even deeper resonance. Her marriages, too, left scars. Though she eventually found stability with her 4th husband, motivational speaker William McDowell, the broken trust from earlier relationships stayed with her. She often spoke about the lessons of betrayal, financial ruin, and heartbreak, reminding fans that even the most admired stars were not immune to pain. Health struggles continued to shadow her later years. Though she bravely denied rumors of pancreatic cancer, she admitted to undergoing treatments for other health concerns. The rumors themselves reflected how frail she had begun to appear in public. Fans worried about her weight loss, her voice's slight fragility, and her endurance on stage. Watching the once vibrant performer grow weaker was heartbreaking for those who had always seen her as a powerhouse of strength. Financial disputes also followed her into old age. Her name became embroiled in lawsuits connected to her chicken and waffles restaurant chain, forcing Gladys to fight in court to clear her reputation. For someone who had already endured gambling addiction and financial betrayal, these controversies were painful reminders of the instability that had marked her life. Yet, in spite of the heartbreak, Gladys refused to let tragedy define her completely. Her faith became her anchor. She often told fans that God's grace had carried her through every storm, through addiction, loss, illness, and grief. She became more vocal about her spirituality, using her platform to encourage others to hold on through life's darkest moments. For Gladys, the music was never just entertainment. It was ministry, a way of sharing her journey and offering healing to others. Today, at 81, Gladys Knight's story is both inspiring and devastating. Inspiring because she never stopped singing, never stopped giving, and never stopped believing. Devastating because the price of her success came at the cost of her peace. Broken marriages, the loss of a child, and health scares that left her vulnerable in her later years. The heartbreaking truth is that Gladys, despite all her triumphs, has carried unimaginable burdens that few of her fans truly understand. Her legacy will always be tied to her strength, the woman who could take her deepest pain and turn it into songs that comforted millions. But behind the curtain, she remained a mother in mourning, a woman scarred by betrayal, and an artist who gave everything to the stage, often at the expense of herself. Her story is not just the tragedy of a superstar. It is the story of survival, faith, and the cost of greatness. For Gladys Knight, the applause eventually faded, but her music and her pain live on forever.